All right, it is Sunday, the weekend of January 14th, and welcome to the Trader Hub Weekly Market Review. Let's go ahead and look at the price action for the indexes this week, starting with the NQ. Price, what do you see there?
Well, we had a pretty successful week of buying, as you can see here on the daily. Monday was just a pretty big buy day, as well as more buying to follow. But we do see that this level here at 17,000 came and we wicked into that. That was on Thursday. You can see on the 4 hour here, we've come up again and wicked into it. I think we both believe this might be the top here, at least for a little bit on this swing. I think we'll expect to see lower lows here before we'll see higher highs again. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that area that we marked out, 17,040-ish, we've seen a lot of interest in that area, and that kind of being the area that needed to hold before the last drawdown. Now that is the area to gain, and we can't gain it, at least currently, until there's additional price action. But we've tested it twice on this leg up, and that to me means that we need to see lower. We've already tested sort of a lower area too, which makes me think that we could see even lower. I think somewhere around 16,600, 16,550-ish seems like a good area for a target on a swing short here. And I think that you could probably wait for a little bit of a retest, maybe a 17,000 even, take a short there, put your stop above the high of the highest candle test of that area, and target somewhere around the areas that I just mentioned, and you'd have a pretty killer risk to reward trade. But I see the same things. There is a lot of wicking in this area, stealing a lot of that liquidity, but at the same time, not being able to break out above those areas is kind of it's pretty telling. I think that we also definitely need to see lower before we see higher. Doesn't really change the overall uptrend on the higher time frames. Just because we're talking about seeing lower on these shorter time frames does not at all kill the bullish uptrend in any way. So we'll just kind of have to see what happens if we get another retest up there or a failure and move lower. But that's kind of what I see. Yep, yeah, pretty much. What do you think about the S&P futures? A little bit different, but kind of similar looking price action.
Yeah, it did come up here a little bit higher, but it does, that does look a little bit more like upwards to me. But it has a very similar level right about there. That it looks like it could come back down to, as well as right there. So those are two good levels I'd be looking at if I were trying to long this, targeting all-time high. How about you?
Yeah, I think that this area that we have marked out here, this was actually the previous all-time high. I believe that's why it's marked there. But I think the area to actually hold, in this case, gain, was up here. 4,820-ish, we'll call that. And I think that we did, but then failing it and failing to close back above tells me that we'll probably see a little bit more downside here as well. Still, it technically is above the previous all-time high that we've marked out. So that could mean that could be a hold. I think that you'd want to see a little bit more continuation down first before you are super confident on a short. But a retest up here at maybe 48.20 and a failure there again would start to look very convincingly like we're going to see lower. Still, I mean, it does look very similar to the NASDAQ. We'll kind of have to see what's going on here this week. I would be surprised if we kind of just move sideways this week. I think something will happen for sure this week. Too much wicking in these areas. I think a lot of the shares have traded hands. We've seen a lot of liquidity snagging, so I think something's going to happen here this week.
All right.
Let's go ahead and move on to the RTY. Kind of a similar look to the NQ, where I think we've kind of lost levels. So we have had a harsher downtrend in this area. I think that this kind of right here, if I'll mark that almost 2,000 even, that's kind of the area that we needed to close back above, and we've gotten a lot of, and we'll actually change the color of that real quick. we've gotten a lot of interest and tests at that level, and it can't break above. So I think we're going to go back lower to actually the level I believe you mentioned last week, somewhere around 1900 even, maybe even 1890s, something like that down here for support, maybe even 1875 as low as there, as an area to hold before either holding there and moving back higher or breaking back down below. But if we do look at the kind of at the higher time frames again, I think we've been pretty vocal about this. I mean, we have regained areas that we've struggled to regain for almost a year, maybe even a year and a half before that. So we're still firmly in uptrend territory, just kind of looking at where maybe would be the best places to take longs on the RTY to break back above into the higher range on this chart. What do you think? Anything that I didn't see here?
No, I think we've got the levels marked out pretty clearly there. 1823 and that 1900 level, like you mentioned. Below that, it would be down here at 1680-ish. But I do think that we'll put in a higher low here, and then continue up with a higher high.
Yeah, I think that we're definitely going to put in a higher low, no matter where that ends up being at these levels. I think that's certainly the case. It would look pretty dang spooky if we made a lower low at this point. That would be a very significant rejection, and we could see like the lower ends that we've marked out on the chart if that happens, like really, really low. But I don't, there's no reason to expect that at this point. So just something to keep in our back pocket. Let's go ahead and look at gold. Gold had a more interesting week. So, it had kind of a drift of death down move for a little bit, and then it just shot up on Friday. So we had some attempts to kind of break back above after like Tuesday. We kind of saw a lot of wicking into the higher ranges of that area and always getting sold off. And then Friday we just had a ton of follow through. We even did wick higher, but ended up closing decisively higher. Still not closing above kind of the key area that I think we need to regain. I think 2060 is the area that we want to see closes above on gold to confirm that this is going to very likely be a higher low. That's kind of what I'm looking to see. So 2060, maybe even as high as, if you're conservative on your levels, 2070. But I think 2060 is kind of the area that I'm going to be watching to confirm for higher on gold. And I kind of think that just based on recent price action, this area down here, 2000s, maybe high 1900s, that's very likely going to be the low of this leg. But we'll have to see. What are your thoughts?
Well, I like where it's at right now. You can see right about here where price actually came down. Oop, I am just goofing it.
It's all good.
And then came back down and produced a new low, and now we've closed up above that level. So I really like, again, a higher low and a higher high. So I think gold is going to start a trend up here on the daily chart.
Yeah, I mean, that would not be a surprising look, right? Coming back down to kind of sweep the sort of the lows there, but not quite making a new low and then rocketing back up. I could totally see that.
Right, sweeping the low of the range and then continue up.
Yeah, and we could probably hone that in on the 4 hour, but that's something that we could look at another time. I mean, at this point, we're just going to have to see if that either just plays out, sweeping the low there, or if we're just going to see continuation higher.
Right.
Let's go ahead and check out the Dow. What do you think of that chart?
Well, the daily's a little bit sideways. We are closing below the level there, which isn't ideal, but we did come up and test it, and we haven't gone lower than the support that brought us up. So we're still doing okay. It could at any time here close up above and then use it for support to keep going up. But on the weekly here, let's take a look. Yeah, it might be a good place for a short, because you can see how, technically it's down below the level that produced the high, but it's a pretty tight level there. So I would probably wait for a lower low and then short the rejection of the level after the lower low. What do you think?
I think it's been ranging for a really long time. It's actually been, if you want to take a look at it this way, it's actually probably been the most resilient index by far. Not just the fact that it's had the largest run up and doesn't get any love, but the fact that, the NQ and the ES have had, during this time frame, they've had like this high and then like a pretty decisive low at some point. This is just ranging sideways. You could argue that that's somewhat bullish in that we're, just kind of exchanging shares at highs here. But looking more at the chart and the levels, like I tend to agree with what you're saying. If we look at the 4 hour and kind of blow this up a little bit, you can see that we kind of closed above here, lost it, and then we've kind of failed to really recapture that area. So I think that you're probably right. I think we'll probably end up seeing this level to hold fail at some point, and then making a lower low, and we could look for shorts on a retest somewhere in this range. I'm not really ready to call out where that exactly would be yet, but we'll have to see. But for now, I think that we should be pretty cautious about this chart, and there's certainly no short or long opportunity in this range. In my opinion, it would be kind of a huge risk to take a long or a short here. You could get swerved on either side.
Right. I'd wait for one of the levels.
Yeah. All right. Let's go ahead and talk about oil. I mean, oil has been kind of just chilling. I still think that we both are. Our belief is that this area at 68, 67-ish was the low. We are doing a lot of consolidating here, but if we look again at the shorter time frames, we are starting to make a series of higher highs and higher lows. So this does look constructive to kind of break above some of these other resistance areas that we've kind of pushed through as in the past. I personally think that this is going to go to $80 before we break the new low, so I'm just definitively bullish on oil at this point. What do you think?
I'm in exactly the same camp. I think it's going up, and it's going up before it's going to drop below $70. I don't think it'll go below 70 before it'll come up here.
Yeah. And I think just to expand on last time we talked about this, I think we're both of the opinion that if this leg is the low, it actually is still, if we look at the weekly, a higher low look. So I think that this will be enough fuel to get us over the previous high and back into the hundreds on oil moving forward. It could take a while to play out, but I think that's kind of my case right now.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Let's go ahead and talk about the dollar. Kind of a boring week. I mean, it had a lot of like wicking and moving around, but we're just consolidating at this range in 102s, but kind of between 102.8 and 102. We'll call that basically 102 even, essentially. It's kind of just ranging around here. We've seen the dollar is capable of kind of ranging for a while and then making big moves, so kind of have to wait for something to happen to take any dollar-centric trades at this point. I still think that this is very likely the low here at 100.8, and that we're in the process of making a series of, like, if I would consider that wick, this is a higher high over kind of this consolidation range here. So I still think that we're more likely to break higher than we are to break down, but I also wouldn't be surprised to see something in like 101s retested, maybe even 101 even. I mean, you could kind of hone that in on the 4-hour chart. Yeah, something like 101 right there would kind of be perfect for a wick down and then reversing higher. That's kind of what I think about the dollar. What about you?
I love the range it's kind of been trading in here. That's pretty good stuff right there. It did make this higher high, and it has held the low that it produced after that. So I think there's a really good chance it goes up higher before anything else. But there is also a good chance that we see, if it isn't able to create higher highs above that wick, what we will see is some kind of action like that. And then I think it'll come down here and try to hold on that level right there where it produced the lower low.
Yeah, that looks good.
And
well, that's
so,
like the last breakdown before the low. So
yeah, it's either something like
Yeah,
that.
shooting straight up, or
Well, not straight up, but that's the from there.
well, that's
to
the next
there.
area. Yeah.
Yeah, or something break down below the area of support and then retest and come down here.
Cool. Yeah, I think those are the two scenarios. Let's talk about KRE. What do you think about the banks?
Kind of just doing similar stuff. It is kind of trending down still here on the daily, but it's trying to hold up above the level here. We did identify this kind of box here, and that looks really good for a bounce. And it's just proceeding to do its thing and doing it slowly. What do you think? Do you think we'll hit the box, or do you think?
I think we're definitely hitting the box, in my opinion.
Yeah.
At this point, I think that if we kind of really get in here, I think that this area is probably like 5150. That's probably the area that needed to really hold. And we tried to come back above, and now we've closed below again. I could see it coming back up there and then going back to the box. But also based on kind of price action, like past price action, I wouldn't be surprised if we just kind of tag the box and then just rip back up. That's certainly a possibility. Even, in my opinion, quite a realistic one. I think that we're at the point where if you're trying to target this 5650 area that we've marked out, you probably want to be DC. We're kind of high relative to where the target would be here, so you want to take smaller size and kind of DCA in at maybe multiple levels. But I'm not so certain that we're going to hit for sure like the bottom of this box. I think there's a lot of strength this move. Keep in mind, I mean, this is sort of the area that once we broke out of this, there was a huge amount of interest in buying at that point. So I think I'd be looking for that area to kind of hold up as like a major area of support. And that's why I think we could potentially just see the high of the box. I mean, I'm not saying that we can't rip through it, but I think there'll be a lot of buyers there. So that's something to keep in mind. What do you think?
Yeah. I like the box. I like it getting down just below the red line there and then coming back into the box as the gain of the level that produces the higher low look here on the weekly. Right? So just coming down to the box and then holding it and going higher. There's
a ton of room to go down and still hold the uptrend on the weekly chart. Like, obviously, just looking at this, no-brainer, 45 would be like the quintessential long. There's so many touches there from below it that it would be a huge support level.
Right.
I'm not confident it's going to get all the way down there, but if it did, that'd be a great buy for sure. I just think that I think the banks are probably going to take off here this year.
Yeah,
just an opinion. All right, well, I think that about covers it. Thanks again for tuning into the Trader Hub Weekly Market Review. If you like this kind of content, sub to the Hub and consider joining our Trader Hub Discord community server. You can find it using our link in the description. See you next week.
Till next time.